Welcome to Rooted in Retirement with Zach Gray, founder of Rooted Wealth Advisors. Zach and the team help families here in Illinois plan successfully for retirement. They strive to understand all of your financial needs to help guide you on the path to your ideal retirement. This is Rooted in Retirement.
In life, there are many things you can't control. The good news is that there are some things you can control, and that includes how much you'll pay in taxes. On today's show, you'll learn how to keep more of your hard-earned money and give less to Uncle Sam. Plus, do you sometimes wonder how to make sense of your investments for retirement? In this week's Retirement Game Plan, Zach shares a simple way to understand how you're invested. Plus, we'll answer some of your biggest retirement questions. Zach, great to be back with you as always.
I'm excited to be here with you too.
We're talking about control today, and we're going to tie this into one topic, but before we get to that, I know that, we all want control. We would all like to have control when it comes to the weather or the market, whatever it may be, and I know that you have 4 small children. Do you feel like you have control, Zach?
With the market and in finances,
No,
maybe a little bit more than the kids, yes. Sometimes it's chaos. Yeah, I leave work to go home to the real work, I think, that's being done because it can be a little wild, but it's fun. Control might be an overstatement.
Yeah, we never have control. And trust me, my kids are even a little older, still don't have control, so that's where you're headed. But today we're talking specifically about taxes. And a lot of people really feel out of control when it comes to taxes. They don't ever feel like they're in control when it comes to that particular topic. But you say it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't. I'm not saying that you have 100% control at all times. We can't control necessarily what's going on in Washington and how those discussions roll out. But what I would say is just don't take this willy-nilly approach to the taxes that you will have to pay over your lifetime, or if you pass, maybe that's a spouse, or even your kids or your grandkids, because chances are, as we start to think back to the taxes that will be a part of your portfolio, property, etc., you can start to plan for that now. And I would tell folks, I think taxes might be moving up in the future, so the time is now. Let's try to get as much control as possible.
Yeah, when we think about retirement as a whole, really give us a big picture of what that can look like. How much of an impact could it have on my retirement? We don't know how long we're going to live. That plays into it as well. Longevity does for sure, but there's so many factors that can affect it.
Well, watching today, everyone's got the opportunity to call into the show, step through our process. It's complimentary. Huge part of our process is looking at income, investments, taxes. Like that's the first 3 components that we speak of. And they all start to link together, even to legacy, which is kind of the last piece of our process, yet still linked how much you get to leave that church or charity or to your kids or grandkids, all a part of it. So to back the bus up, I will tell you tens of thousands of dollars of difference. And that's so important as you start to take a look at, once again, this 30,000 foot view that you asked for. How does this look long term? We typically run our process and we'll step someone through it to say, Amy, what if we had never met? We hadn't thought about taxes, taking back control of this taxation. And then how does it look if maybe we shifted a few things? What if we did some Roth conversions? Maybe if we looked at where do we fall on the tax ladder and maybe instead of that traditional 401k, we opt for the Roth 401k. How does this start to look and impact things over time? And I will tell you, the numbers add up fast. And it also leads to more longevity of that money. And even back to this position of married, single taxpayer in the case that maybe someone predeceases, even leaving money behind, it's all relating right back to taxes, trying to get as much control as you can. But I will tell you, to answer your question swiftly, it's a huge, huge component of how much money can actually be left in your pocketbook or left into your family when you're gone.
So many of us think about what our lifestyle will be like when we are retired, and no one wants to take a step back from that. They want to live the same kind of life, enjoy the same types of things. And I'm sure you have many clients that are now thinking, I may not be able to have the same lifestyle when it comes to taxes playing a part of it.
Yeah, I even think back to my own grandfather, and he says, Zach, I thought all of those years this focus was on tax preparation. We'll talk a little bit about that maybe a little later in the show. But I think it's important to understand that, he'd go in, he'd sit down with the accountant, they'd try to get the taxes down, push them down. And hey, at the time, maybe that felt right, and it felt good to maybe not necessarily be in a position that, we were paying an abundant amount. But now, as he takes a look at it, he goes, Zach, I'm in as kind of tough of a tax spot as I ever have been. I'm blessed that I have this maybe tax concern, but at the end of the day, I never thought that I would be here in retirement. I thought I'd earn while I was working at this level. In retirement, I'll be at a much lower level. And Amy, to your point, whether that's a lifestyle, and just we get accustomed to a certain life and certain income, or whether that's, I didn't think that mom or dad was going to leave me that. Oh, I forgot about aunt and uncle so-and-so that are going to leave me this farm ground or this property or whatever the case might be. Next thing you know, you go, well, I've got this coming in. I've got that coming in. I've still got my own pension. Wait a minute, we've got our Social Securities. And for many folks, there is kind of rough of a tax spot in retirement is what they were working.
Yeah, those are gifts that you think are great when you get them, but then you don't always think about that. And retirees really want to consider their children, their grandchildren, before they give these gifts.
Correct. I think you have to take a look at, that being a whole conversation in itself. That's why we kind of part out this legacy piece to our planning process. But you're right, Amy. Maybe that is an inheritance or a gift or something of the sorts. Even without those things, even if we have some folks out there watching going, I don't have that. Keep in mind, where are you on a tax ladder today? What is your net taxable income? Take a look at it on your 1040 and then start to say, okay, where do I think I'll be in retirement? Put those pieces together, and once again, we can help with that as well, because taxes is a huge conversation.
Okay, we've got more to talk about taxes when we come back from our break, so thank you, Zach. The bad news is taxes can be a big expense in retirement. The good news is you have options to help lower your bill. Zach explains next.
You know you want to retire. You might even know when you want to retire. What you don't know is what the world will look like. A short market drop, a crash, a recession. What if I told you these words don't have to change your retirement dreams? World events can impact your retirement, but thankfully, they don't have to. Can your retirement survive the unexpected? Visit the link to find your risk score to help you prepare for retirement when you're ready. It's time for you, not outside forces, to be in control of your retirement. Find your risk score so you can be ready no matter what comes next.
Hi, it's Zach Gray from Rooted Wealth Advisors. If you're like many people, you might be wondering if you're ready for retirement. Have you saved enough? How much income will you need? When can you retire? Planning for retirement can feel overwhelming. That's why we created our Retirement Roadmap Toolkit. It's designed to give you the resources to gain confidence as you start your journey to and through retirement. Visit the link today to get your free toolkit. At Rooted Wealth Advisors, we believe you deserve to have a great retirement. Visit the link to receive your free kit today.
Welcome back to Rooted in Retirement with Zach Gray of Rooted Wealth Advisors.
Did you know taxes could be your largest expense in retirement? It catches a lot of retirees by surprise, but there are ways to potentially lower your tax bill. And I'm back with Zach Gray now. We're going to get to some of those tax saving options in just a minute, but I wanted to give you a chance to go through the difference between tax preparation and tax planning. Because you brought up your grandfather, and I think a lot of people do. Like, what's the difference there?
Yeah, I think that, one's reactive, one's proactive. And as you start to think about planning, sometimes it feels heavy, all these moving parts of income planning and how do my investments look, and what about taxes and more planning with that, even legacy, once again, kind of back to this whole picture of our process. What I would say is for most people, they say, well, here's my things. I have my 1099, my wages from work. So, let's put all these pieces together. Maybe they're thrown into a shoebox, and you wind up at the accountant's office to say, well, Amy, here you go. Can you help me? And I would just say that we're missing the boat in many ways. Some people think that we have all the way until April for all tax planning measures. Not the case. So as you start to think about this, understand that planning is going to say, well, how does this look? And what can we do to change the outcome? Does it make sense? Does it not? How does this look long-term even, right? As we start to think about well into the future, decades into the future, even leaving money behind to something or someone. So big difference on just preparing the tax documents in April or whenever that might be. I know we've had a few odd years here as of recent, but then also be taking a look at the planning piece of the puzzle. Planning might include, hey, you know what, where do I place my money? Where do I, maybe do some Roth conversions to max out a tax bracket? Most of that has to be done by December 31st. Yeah, there's a few things we can do leading up to April, but I just want folks to understand preparation and planning. That really struck home with me years ago as I started in this business, and I thought, boy, that's a nice key there to understand a big difference.
Let's go to the tax saving options. A lot of people want to know, where do I start with this? What are my options?
Well, what I would say is let's first back up and say, what do we think about taxes? Do we think that they go up in the future? We think they go down in the future? Typically, when I ask that question, Amy, the answer is I think that they're going to go up. How much up? We don't know. And even if someone thinks, you know what, I think they're going to stay status quo, then I say, well, what about your investments? Amy, do you want them to grow? In your different investable options you have, I kind of call it this taxable bucket, tax deferred, tax free. They say, well, of course I want them to grow. Well, then it leads us right back to saying, okay, well then in essence, your tax liability will be going up whether Washington changes those rates or not. Most people do not feel as if they're going to go down. So as we start to look at that, I want to pause there for a moment to say, what do we think about taxes in the future? So once again, do we want to chase a tax deduction now, which might make sense for a lot of folks? I have a client, a long-term client, great gal. She was an executive level accountant, and so she was earning a really nice, healthy income. She says, Zach, in retirement, I just want to give back. I want to do some charitable work. I'm going to live a really simple retirement. So she was going to go from an income level of fairly high to something fairly low. So during her working years, getting the tax deduction now while working was really important to her. But as we start to look at most people, we say, hey, you're earning at this level. Amy, is it really worth, focusing solely on the now of the tax deduction? There's a lot of things we can do. We can put money into like traditional 401ks or traditional IRAs. We can look at some different charitable deductions. We can get, much more elaborate with some of those things, like a charitable remainder trust. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do and we can bring to the table for our watchers today. But what I would say is, where do you think taxes are going in the future? Where are you at on that tax ladder? How does that look moving forward for yourself? Because for most people, we're not earning here and then dropping way down here.
Yeah, that was a great example, though, listening to her story and how she wants to change her lifestyle. What about RMDs, required minimum distributions? Does that have an impact with taxes?
Most definitely does, because keep in mind, I consider those to be like RFDs. They're forced distributions, right? So requirement to take them no matter what. And what I would say is that for a lot of folks, many times they're in a position where they say, you know what, I've got this pension cash flow or Social Security's coming into the house. We're okay, we're good. And what Uncle Sam has to say about that is well, here's your mandatory distribution, right? Here's your forced distribution. And you might say, well, I'm okay, I don't need that. And the only way to put that back into an investment is to then put it into a taxable account. So it's kind of sent to you, taxed at your highest ordinary income rate, and then the only option you have at that point is to put it back into a taxable account, such as a brokerage account or the bank, whatever. But my point here is that taxed at your highest ordinary income rate, and then once again put back into something that's going to get taxed along the way. So can it affect you? Most definitely it can.
If I'm working with an advisor that's not necessarily forward thinking, isn't maybe processing the tax conversation into my overall plan, what do I need to do?
I think that you need to get that type of advice. Now that might obviously sound very self-serving. We have a few CPA firms that we keep on retainer. I have some great relationships that we will leverage back because as mentioned before, I'm not a CPA and I'm not an accountant. I have a lot of letters after my name that speak to the fact that I know a fair amount about that, but I like to go back to the experts in the field, make sure that we're crossing the T's, dotting the I's in the right way. And of course, I think that should be really the truth for anyone that's working with a financial advisor that's taking a very holistic approach. This has to be a key part of the conversation, and we have to bring in those experts as needed.
Yeah, surround yourself with good people. Always great advice. At Rooted Wealth Advisors, that's what you'll get. All right, thanks so much. Straight ahead, if you don't have a good handle on your investment strategy for retirement, stick around. Zach has an easy way to make sense of it all. Stay tuned.
There are some things you can't avoid, but you can avoid overpaying taxes in retirement. You may think your taxes will go down in retirement, but that's not always true. In fact, sometimes your tax liability could go up. We're offering a free guide to show how you may be able to pay fewer taxes in retirement. Learn how different retirement accounts are taxed and options to help make your retirement income more tax efficient, all in easy to understand terms. Download this free tax guide now to help keep what's yours and avoid overpaying taxes in retirement.
You're watching Rooted in Retirement with Zach Gray of Rooted Wealth Advisors.
In today's retirement game plan, does market volatility make you nervous? Zach shares a strategy that just might help you feel more confident. Zach?
In this week's retirement game plan, we're going to talk about the perfect investment. But wait a minute, is there a perfect investment? I don't think so. And this reminds me of a couple that just came into our office. They had seen me speak at a local library and they said, you know what, let's go ahead and visit with Zach and the team. That being said, Mark and Patty came on into the office. And I could quickly understand that there was about a 180-degree swing between the two when it came to talking about investments and really what they were after as they started to talk about those investments. So that being said, I will tell you that Mark, he was much more the gambler and he was okay taking that risk. He wanted a lot of growth when it came to his portfolio. On the other hand, Patty, she was a lot more of a conservative gal and she said, I just need some safety. He's a risk taker, I'm not. I need to have that safety as a part of my portfolio. What I tell you is that, well, both of those can be achieved, but there's a third thing to be thinking about, and that is liquidity. These are really the three items that I like to speak to as I think about investments and, frankly, the lack thereof of all three in one investment structure. Most of the time, you can't get all of three of these wrapped up together, and I'll explain a little bit more. So let's start to think about maybe just a few of them, like growth and safety. Well, that does exist, and maybe in a lot of different examples, but one that comes to mind is real estate. Historically, this will keep up with inflation and likely outpace it, and it's a relatively safe investment most of the time. Yeah, there is a little bit of risk on exactly where that piece of real estate lies, but for the most part, it can be relatively safe. Here's the issue, folks, as you start to think about this, what about liquidity? You know, we've experienced some real estate endeavors over time, and I will tell you that it's not always easy to move right on from that. And as we've seen that in my own personal life, as I've seen that with some of my clients, liquidity is the concern. It might take you 3, 6, maybe 12 months to sell a piece of real estate to get that cash that you can put back into a portfolio. So as you start to think about growth and safety, yeah, they exist, and there's maybe different investment options that come to your mind, but real estate is a great example, but it does lack that liquidity. Now, on the flip side of that coin, you can get liquidity and growth, so Mark can be happy, and I will tell you is that a lot of different investments come to mind here, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. There's a lot that have a lot of that growth potential. Now, there might be some volatility, which is maybe back to this question of safety. Are stocks safe? There's some things that can be done to try to put some stop losses and some things of that nature together when it comes to these investments, but for the most part, looking at a 30,000-foot view of this, I will tell you that mutual funds and stocks and even the bond market can be fairly liquid. However, they're not going to be all that safe as you start to think about the pieces of the puzzle that we spoke of, and really only two of those three come to mind here, liquidity and growth. That being said, what about Patty? What about her example, safety and liquidity? Well, once again, a lot of different investment options come to mind, CDs, a money market, just a savings account. It's nice that you can drive up to your local bank and you can say, hey, I'm going to need some dollars for the weekend. Go ahead and get me some money from my bank account. So it's very liquid, it's very safe, but there becomes this question about growth. As we all know, sometimes we don't see quite what inflation's looking at in terms of returns here. And so now we start to go, do we have some inflationary risk? Especially as we think back to specific points in time where we see inflation year over year that might be a 4 or 5 or a 6% number. Are you getting that in your bank CD? Are you seeing that in your money market or your savings account? So once again, the two that come to mind here is safety. That's great for Patty, back to my example, and it's great for liquidity. However, there's just not a lot of growth that ensues. I really just want to kind of speak to the fact that many times We're led to believe that all three of these do exist in one perfect investment. What I will tell you is, I don't think that that's the case. You can hear a lot of the pundits on television or radio. You might pick up an article and read something. You might have been to a workshop that might be at a library or a college, maybe even a dinner workshop for that matter, and someone speaks about the perfect investment, and folks, it just does not exist. So I just want to give you a little piece of my thoughts as you start to think about how do we get all of these things to work together. And I just want to be honest and transparent with you as you start to think about these three pieces of the puzzle: growth, safety, liquidity. Most of the time, you're not going to find these working all together in one investment, and that is so very important to understand as you go throughout your planning process. Back to you, Amy.
Up next, if you have questions about retirement, stay tuned. Zach has answers. We'll be right back.
Social Security. You've been paying into the system your whole career. Now it's time to get the most out of it. But with so many choices, what's the best strategy for you? And how can you maximize your benefits? Find out in this no-obligation Social Security report. Learn how your Social Security benefits can play a role in your overall retirement income plan. A lot of factors go into optimizing your benefits, and if you make an informed decision, you could end up with tens of thousands of extra dollars in retirement. You only get one chance to make the best decision for you. Take the first step and download the Social Security report today.
Hi, it's Zach Gray from Rooted Wealth Advisors. If you're like many people, you might be wondering if you're ready for retirement. Have you saved enough? How much income will you need? When can you retire? Planning for retirement can feel overwhelming. That's why we created our Retirement Roadmap Toolkit. It's designed to give you the resources to gain confidence as you start your journey to and through retirement. Visit the link today to get your free toolkit. At Rooted Wealth Advisors, we believe you deserve to have a great retirement. Visit the link to receive your free kit today.
Welcome back to Rooted in Retirement with Zach Gray of Rooted Wealth Advisors.
Time now for your questions about retirement. And Zach is here and he looks poised and ready to go.
Do my best.
As always. All right, here is our first question from Marisol in Champaign. I know I have to be mindful of taking my RMDs at 72. What retirement accounts are subject to RMD rules, which is of course required minimum distributions?
Yeah, exactly. So I think a key point used to be 70 and a half. For many folks, they didn't catch on to that change. So I'll just pause for a moment. It's now 72 instead of 70 and a half for those RMDs. And it's any tax qualified account, meaning that what I call tax deferred investments, that's what I titled it in my book, The Retirement Roadmap, is the traditional 401ks, the 457s, 403s, 401as, traditional IRAs. The list kind of goes on, but it's where you were able to get that tax deduction, no tax as it grows, but now when we pull it back out, we're going to have to pay ordinary income taxes, and you will be forced to take those out. If you inherit those from a spouse, there's a certain set of rules for that. Also, if from any other family member or friend, but keep in mind, we're going to be forced to take that money out, and also forced to take out something that we inherit in a 10-year window typically. So that was another change of that Secure Act that came into play in early 2020. So just keep in mind, a few things have changed there, but RMDs, 72, and once again, for those tax deferred accounts.
Okay, here's another one for you, Zach. From Dale in Urbana, my wife and I have noticed a big jump in prices lately. We have some goals to remodel a kitchen and put in a pool when we retire, but now we're worried about what prices will be when retirement comes. Do you have a rule of thumb to figure out so we'll know if we can afford it?
I think this goes back to some income conversations that you and I have had on some different shows. And what I would say is that we have to start to figure out the non-negotiables of life. And I say that's the fixed expenses that are just going to keep coming day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. What are those expenses and costs that we have? It's neat to think of these, dream items or these bucket list items of the pool and the updates. And maybe that is very relevant to this situation that we're talking about. But I think until we check the box on some protected income of what those cash flows are that we need, we should probably at least pause there for a moment, make sure that's taken care of, then we can talk about the extras. Because I think that that's the safest way to go about it, as well as the fact that, prices have been jumping over time. Inflation has been really jumping here as of more recent years. We have to be thinking about how does this look today? How will it look going forward? And once again, how protected are we moving forward with our income? It starts to drive the bus on, well, can we do these fun things? And I think it gives us that confidence and, really kind of that peace to be able to do it.
So a pool, not a necessity then? I can't
I
pull
don't
that one
know.
up? Okay.
Well, maybe just for you, Amy.
I was really just putting that in the back of my mind. All right, here's another one for you from Jacqueline in Tolono. My husband and I are considering joining a retirement community that has different levels of care as needed. I'm worried about the price. What do you think of communities like that?
I think they can be great. I will say that, yes, healthcare is a very pricey subject to be talking about in retirement. It's likely the number one expense that we have. It's taxes and healthcare. They're the top of the list. It's not the fun things like a pool or anything of the sorts. But what I would say is that healthcare is near and dear to me. I've talked about my grandfather on the show in the past. Love him to death, and at the end of the day, he's one of my biggest role models. One of the biggest challenges that I've seen him take on is caring for my grandma Marilyn. And it got to a point where he had to retire from farming, stay at home to help, and then thus she needed some skilled care. Now luckily for Gramps, it was right across the road, but it was very expensive because he paid out of pocket for 18 years. And that is a very, very pricey endeavor. So it lands heavy on my heart. I think that these type of communities can be great. Maybe it can be totally independent condo, and then maybe help as needed, someone to check in, and then it can progress as we progress with some of our needs. Once again, it goes right back to, if I'm being blunt, can we afford it? Have we built that into our income plan? Or do we even have some other pieces of the puzzle like long-term care planning that we've already done? Maybe we have a policy that'll pay for some of that, and that's where things get a little more unique.
Okay, here's another one for you. Zach from Vince in Carlock. I'm 54 years old and my employer just offered a Roth 401k option. I'll probably work another 10 to 12 years. Is it worth switching to that from a traditional 401k?
Probably. I think that taxes are moving up. That being said, I'd be in a situation that I'd be thinking about getting taxed now at a lower tax rate instead of at a higher one into the future. There's a little bit that drives, back to this question of where am I at today in terms of income? Where will I be in retirement in terms of income? Do I need to focus on getting a tax deduction today? Is it imperative because, hey, I'm way up here on this tax ladder, and in retirement, Amy, I'm going to be on such a lower, position? Chances of that happening are slim. We just don't see that a lot. Not here to say that we don't see it at all, but once again, I would be then saying if we think that taxes are moving up, if we want to maintain a similar income level in retirement, then by all means, I think that Roth 401k, definitely something to look at.
All right, thanks so much, Zach. Great answers as always. And if you have a question, submit it and we may just answer it on a future show. And if you want to know how to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, reach out now to start planning for your ideal retirement. For Zach and the team at Rooted Wealth Advisors, I'm Amy Sharp, wishing you a healthy and happy journey to and through retirement.